All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with David Heaps. David, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show.
Kevin, thank you. It is a tremendous pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and actually, you and I we're not that far from each other because you're downtown Seattle area, right? And
I'm actually in Kenmore.
Kenmore. Okay. All right. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm in Arlington, Washington, about 40 miles north of Seattle. So, compared to interviewing entrepreneurs who might be all over this country, you and I are relatively close to each other and
We
stuff.
are.
And
Yeah.
so,
Beautiful
and
day.
it is. It's a beautiful day. It's been a great week. Um, and I want to start by just giving a shout out to Brianna and really the whole team over at Interview Ballet because those guys, man, I just really appreciate them and the work that they're doing. And I have met some absolutely amazing podcast guests because of those
Mm.
guys. And so you are obviously one of their clients and they help you get on podcasts. But the other side of that is guys like me who are podcast hosts. And
Mhm.
Brianna and I met her probably about 2.5 years ago. She reached out to me and just said, Kevin, I see you're doing this podcast, and I think we could send you some really great guests. And I'd just like to get to know you a little bit. And so we hit it off, and ever since then, she has been sending me emails, maybe once or twice a month. And she'll have one or two people that she'll be like, Kevin, I think so and so would this person would be a really great guest for the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And what do you think? And and after a couple of years of this now, we've got to this point where I have met some really amazing guests because of Brianna and
Mm.
the role that she holds in my
Mm.
life. And so now, whenever I get an email from her, it's kind of like Christmas time. I don't know exactly what's in there until I open it, but I know it's going to be good, you know? And, so, and what a cool relationship to have with somebody that, like, when
Mm.
you hear from them, you're just so excited, like, oh, I wonder what Brianna's got to tell me about today, you know? And it just really, and like when I tell people that are guests on the show, they're kind of, well, I hope I can live up to all of that. And you know what? I always just say, you know what? We can just take the pressure right off you on that one because Brianna would have never even connected us in the first place if you couldn't live up to the what's been going on, you know. And so she wouldn't have introduced us in the first place. And so I am really been, you and I already had a conversation, got to know each other a little bit, and I'm like, oh heck yeah, David, I'm definitely in for doing an interview for the podcast with you. And so here we are, and I've really been looking forward to this. And so yeah.
Well, I have too, and that's really where I wanted to start, just because I don't meet many people with your level of enthusiasm. It's very genuine. It's very infectious. And it was very clear to me inside the first 10 seconds of our meeting, like, oh, this guy is on a mission. He loves what he does. And I love being around that. So I got very excited to do it. In fact, I think I had an opportunity to do this earlier and I couldn't make it work. And I was so bummed because I've had to wait, I think, almost a month and a half to get on this call with you, but I've really been looking forward to it.
Yeah, same. Well, I'll tell you, we'll just start. We'll dig right in here, and I'll just ask a nice, simple question. Well, at least it's a simple question for me to ask. Sometimes it's not always the simplest thing for my guests to answer, but it's a great place to start. We'll just start with David. What do you do, and who do you serve?
Yeah, I'm an executive coach. I started a coaching practice called Leadering about 11 years ago,
Okay.
and I help primarily founding CEOs, the ones who are really hitting a wall. They've got the one thing that they can't stop doing or can't make themselves start doing, and it has gotten to the point in their life and in their business that it's they can't outrun it anymore, and that's usually where they call me.
Okay. So how do people find out about you when they're in that kind of a position? How do they find out that okay, David's maybe somebody who might be able to help us with this?
Yeah, so far my entire practice has been built on word of mouth, pretty
Okay.
much. I've had a few people that have found me through LinkedIn, but primarily word of mouth.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I people have differing takes on this whole referral thing. And some people have, I've heard people say, you cannot build a business exclusively on referrals. And to that, I say, no, you're absolutely wrong. You totally can do that. That's how I've done it, same exact way. Everybody who comes into my world comes through an introduction by somebody who already knows me and stuff. And that could be as being a guest for the podcast, that could be as, for the other stuff that I do, what have you. But everybody comes through a personal introduction. And I do zero
Sure.
external marketing. I have a website. In fact, funny, I was just talking about it this morning because another guy on a group call I was on saying, he's like, I don't even have a website. And I had to chuckle. I was like, I have one, but it doesn't get used. And and so, so what inspires you most, David, about the work that you get to do and the impact that you get to have?
Yeah. I think maybe the the funnest gift that I have is that I just see what makes people special. I see what makes them unique. I see their genius, and I always have. And I also meet people who are having a really tough time because of something else in their life that is keeping them from fully expressing that. And a lot of times they don't even see what makes them so special, and they're having a hard time expressing it. So when I can help somebody free themselves from that and start to express that, just to see somebody go off and be what they are,
Yeah,
uh, that's it.
yeah,
That's where it's at
yeah.
for me. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've had that kind of experience where other people saw things in me that I didn't see for myself or couldn't see for myself. And even when they would point out certain things, I couldn't own it at the time. I
Mm,
can now, but
mm.
back, I mean, 12, 13 years ago, no, I couldn't. I just, and I was definitely standing in my own way of just doing what I get to do now and stuff. And so I can, man, I feel you when you talk about that
Mm.
because like I said, I've been there and I've experienced it and I've had people that cared about me and loved me that would point this stuff out and that saw things in me that I did not see for myself. And man, I'll tell you, and when we do start figuring this stuff out and we figure out that like, wow, that really is me, and I just show up that way, and it's not hard for me to do that, and it's very actually easy for me to do that, and I enjoy doing that, and and but so many people they don't get there. Why do you think that they don't get there?
So many reasons, but that's where what I do, comes in. I developed a methodology that I call inner architecture work, and primarily, what inner architecture is when you were very young, you came to a handful of conclusions about yourself, and they weren't charitable. That you did the best you could, but you made some conclusions about yourself. You didn't know you did it. Your mind created protection around those wounds so that you wouldn't have to come into contact with them again. And that shows up in your mind as, that voice in your mind that tells you to go, go here instead of there. Don't let too much out. Don't be seen. Whatever it is it's telling you. And we follow that direction because that's just what we do. It's a reasonable thought in a reasonable moment, but the direction is actually taking us right into the proof that the original thing we created about ourselves, that belief we created about ourselves, is true. And so it's this never ending, self perpetuating, I call it the self fulfilling prophecy machine. And we have a few of them going at any one time. So it's you doing it and you don't know you're doing it because you're too close to it.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
somebody can come to you and say, wow, you're amazing at this. This is so great. But you've got 10, 20, sometimes 30, 40 years selling yourself something very, very different. And it's going to take a minute for you to get on board with something other than what you've trained yourself to do over many, many years.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody who has not done that to themselves, or have we all done that to ourselves?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but my suspicion is we all have done that to ourselves.
Mhm.
And some of it, some of it's easier to see, and usually other people have a much easier time seeing it than we have in seeing it ourselves.
Mhm.
But I would say all of us have, but obviously I don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get into doing the kind of work that you do now? What's your backstory, David?
Mhm. Well, I guess the last time I had a real job was back in 2008, and I was COO of this mid-sized debt buying company.
Okay.
And I was in a pretty rough place. I mean, I was doing well in life, I was making good money. And I think anybody looking at my life on the surface would have thought, oh, he's doing great. And in many respects, I was doing great, but I was running from something. And I was running from a fear of poverty that had been chasing me my whole life. And no matter how much money I made, and no matter how much I tried to protect myself in different ways, the fear was not leaving me. Um, so in 2008, I knew I had to do something else because I also knew that the work that I was doing, though it was great, I was very grateful for it, and I was pretty good at it. Uh, I knew it wasn't touching uh, a deeper part of me. I knew I had more to give, and I didn't know what that was. But things got painful enough, I think, that I hit the reset button, sold everything, quit my job, and kind of set myself adrift. And about 5 years later, wound up down in the Amazon jungle on a shamanic path, though. And in that, I spent about an hour, excuse me, an hour and a half, a year and a half. Spent about a year and a half in silent isolation as part of the process
Wow.
of doing what I was trying to do at the time. And in those long extended periods, I didn't do a year and a half straight. It was 3 to 6 months at a time over about 4 years. I started doing inner work without even knowing what I was doing.
Okay.
Started kind of mapping the territory and developing a language, and I got myself, I thought I was going to have a very, very different kind of life. And everything turned me right back around into the corporate world, just in a very different way. And when I got back in, I had no idea what that was going to look like and what shape it was going to take. And everything just started to fall into place. And that was about 11 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So now, as a result of your own journey and the work that you're now doing, helping other people, what's an example of a result? And you can share more than one, and you don't have to name names here. You could if you want, totally your call. But what's a
Mhm.
result or results that you've helped a client get that you're just incredibly proud of, David?
Yeah, I'll talk about one, and I can never say names.
Okay.
The people who come to me this is not anything they're going to share with anybody. So, um, but I'm writing a book right now, so I'm writing about this one case study, so it's kind of top of mind. So maybe I'll just start with this one. This gentleman, a little older than me, maybe 55, 56 years old, came to me, and he was in the throes of losing his second company, and a sizable company.
Okay.
And this is not a dumb guy. This is a very smart, very educated, just a really brilliant, awesome guy. And he didn't know why. He didn't know why he could not keep these things going, why he kept on getting in this situation. By the way, he did end up losing that company, and he just didn't know why. So I have no ending that says I saved his company in the nick of time. That's not what happened. It was not long after he lost his second big company that he really got serious about the work we were doing. Not that he wasn't serious before, but there was a certain intensity that now was part of the work for him because he was in a very desperate situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I need to explain just a little bit about what happened to him because
Yes.
it's kind of complicated what brought his companies down, but I've got this pretty well laid out, so I think I can do this briefly. When he was little, before he could before he could speak, he had a mom who was just dangerous, not like cold or distant, but flat out dangerous. When he cried because he was hungry or he was tired or whatever, he got beat quite a bit.
Wow.
So, and that continued into his life. So he got a very serious message very young: is to need and to show it brings pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is one of the conclusions that he drew about himself at a very young age. And the other thing that started happening is, as you can imagine, somebody who grows up in a house like that, they become very aware of their environment, like hyper aware of what's going on, because you do something wrong that could bring something that that's not going to make you happy. So he developed a gift for being able to detect and see things very quickly. And a couple times, very naively, called his mom out and sort of said what he saw. And that kind of got him beat worse than anything.
Wow.
So to see danger, to see something that isn't right, and to say it brings punishment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how that played out in his adult life, he went on, moved away from home, went to university, all the things. But what happened in his mind because of these conclusions that he drew is that there were certain people that would come along in his life and he would hand them the power that he handed his mother. So what that was is anybody that he saw as an authority, somebody who stood in between him and something he needed, his mind would quickly file them as somebody that was not to be questioned.
Okay.
So when he saw something, heard something, felt something that wasn't quite right, instead of doing the one thing that his superpower of being able to see taught him to do, his nervous system taught him to shut down in those moments.
Mm.
So it would reach in and disable the one thing that made him so valuable to himself. It didn't happen with everybody. He could be direct, he could be hard, he could be all the things he needed to be. But if it was somebody that he had placed in that position, he just shrank, he just froze. And he didn't even realize this was happening because this was just his life. So the structure of his company, the foundation and the walls and all the levels of his company were built on all of these decisions, these things that he let go, that he didn't say anything, that he let happen. And then eventually, they stand for a while, but eventually those things come back and bring these things down in different ways.
Yeah.
So he didn't know that. So through the work that we did together, we were able to uncover that.
Mhm.
And um, well, I'll just stop there, and maybe you have a question or two. I don't want to just dominate
Well,
with yeah.
man, what a powerful story and example of what you were talking about earlier, about how we do this to ourselves completely unknowingly, and we just kind of like, man, we end up being our own biggest roadblock to just being able to use our God-given gifts and abilities for to just be able to serve others and make our biggest impact in this world and stuff. And and I listen to you share that story, and I just think of, like, yeah, because I've recognized that, when I was a kid, um we moved when I was in fourth grade, and we moved so that my dad could be closer to his work and not have to commute so far. He was commuting an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And
mm,
and so we moved out of this small community that I had grown up in my entire life until fourth grade, and we moved into another community an hour away where now I didn't know anybody. And the way that that unfolded, and that I had challenges making friends in that new community and stuff, and where I had all these other friends, and now for whatever reason I found it really challenging to make new friends and stuff in fourth grade, and ended up shutting down in a lot of ways. And I did find some friends and stuff, but it wasn't like it was in that other community. And all the way through 10th grade. My dad got diagnosed with cancer at the beginning of my ninth grade year. He passed away at the end of my 10th
mm,
grade year. And that was a really
mm,
rough thing for a 16-year-old kid to go through, watching your dad just deteriorate to the point where his body will no longer serve him and stuff. And
mm,
on one and in one respect, it really kind of sucked. In another respect, though, you know what? I have never had any regrets because I had every conversation I ever needed to have with my dad before he passed away, you
mm,
know.
mm, mm,
And I was really I look at that as an incredible gift
mm,
that I got to have all those conversations. And yeah, I cried with him a lot because I knew he
mm,
was dying and I didn't want him to die.
mm,
And I'm like, I don't want this. And but yet then after my dad passed away, my mom was good friends with a neighbor gal who taught at this private school. And she was like, I want you and Kyle, my brother, to go to the private school. And I didn't want to go to the private school, but she was like, look, she goes, you go there, you try it out for 1 quarter. And if you absolutely do not like it, then you can go back to public school and stuff. And the way it worked out, my neighbor, him and his sister went to that school, and then when we got to that school, we found out that there was two other kids of mine that were friends that went to that school, and it was a much smaller school. In fact, the entire high school, from freshman through senior, only had like 80 kids. My graduating class at that school was 16, but yet because I had these friends that had already gone to that school, they kind of like just paved the way and introduced me to everybody. And it was like this experience of like, wow, I just fit in so well there. And I might, because of my other friends connected me with their friends, I just started making friends so fast. And that last 2 years of high school was an absolutely amazing experience. And it was like I found my people again. And and I didn't realize this until years later that when a guy was just asking me questions and stuff about my childhood. And he's like, Kevin, he's like, is it any wonder that you're such a connector for other people now after going through all that yourself? I was like, can you see why you want to hold that role for other people that you just care about and stuff? And I'm just like, wow. I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And but that was I mean, like within the last 10 years that
mm,
that
mm.
happened.
Sure.
So all this time up until then, I didn't realize that that had happened and stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow, all this time that that I didn't even realize. But so is when you start saying this, that like we do this to ourselves, and without even knowing we're doing it, I've experienced it, and I'm like, he's totally right. you know? And I bet we all do this. I bet we all have these experiences that we put this meaning on or
Mm,
whatever, that like if I do this, then this is always going to happen.
mm, mm,
And so I'm just, and I I think that's just, if for anybody listening to this that's hearing what's David's saying, that's just kind of maybe heard my experience here a little bit, that maybe they're kind of seeing like, oh yeah, I can see where that's going on in my life too and stuff. And the good news is there's a way out and there's a way through, you know. and and
Uh, it's so close. It's so maddeningly close, and a lot. And I will close the loop and answer your question from the previous one, but I just want to say that there's a lot of misunderstood. There's a lot of misunderstanding around this kind of work, and it's deep, and it's dark, and it's scary, and it's freeing.
yeah,
And it's not complicated. It's just right there. If you just know how to take the things that are happening in your life now that are not agreeing with the life that you want to be creating, and you spend a little time looking at them and sort of reverse engineering where they come from, in a few minutes, you can have a deeper understanding of why you do what you do if you just put a little bit of attention on it and with somebody who kind of knows how to navigate that territory.
yeah, yeah,
And I just wanted to close the loop on that gentleman because you asked what I was proud of, and what I was proud of. The same thing with any of my clients is I got him to the point where he now recognizes in the moment he's doing it what he's doing. So instead of continuing that cycle, he has learned to develop a sensitivity to what happens when that type of experience wants to take over and make him go down that very well-worn path. He now knows, oh, I know what this feeling in my throat. I know this feeling in my chest. My mind's telling me to do a particular thing. I know what this means. And it's not easy. And sometimes he doesn't do it perfectly, but he's starting to make those other choices. He's starting to stay in the room. He's starting to say no. He's starting to ask questions to get his needs met, to get his curiosity satisfied. Because, again, that seeing of his, that is the ticket for him.
yeah,
His seeing. That the
yeah,
one thing is his system has been programmed to shut off. So that's one of, I don't know, many that I'm very, very proud of, and just happy for him that he's
yeah,
going forward with a very different outlook.
yeah. I mean, that is incredibly powerful. Well, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set here and people have a good, feel for who you are and what you're all about, David, I want to switch gears just a little bit and I want to start talking about the relationship side of this.
Okay.
So have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yes, I have a few, and
Okay.
the one that comes to mind, I can probably say his first name. He'd probably be okay with that. But this was before. Well, actually, this was while I was still COO of that company
Okay.
in Denver, and this would have been in about 2005. And I think I was probably at my lowest point ever in my life, a very, very dark place. And um, I was I probably still had, well, no, I was probably at the tail end of a 16-year, pretty serious depression. Never diagnosed, but you know, it was pretty dark. And the gentleman whose company I was running introduced me to a guy named Sam
Okay.
and his wife. And the first time I met him, I just could barely even look at him. I remember he walked in the door of this restaurant, and the way he was dressed and the way his wife looked, I just had all kinds of judgment. Who is this guy? Just the way he walked in, and this guy was going to change my life. And and I had no idea. Only maybe hung out with him at maybe a dozen times, half a dozen times.
Okay.
And in those meetings, he well, first of all, he and his wife were living a life that I couldn't even fathom. They their life was so much their own. It was completely of their own design. I'd never seen anything like it. And I really needed to see that. And it's really what helped me kind of lean in and give him the respect and attention that he actually deserved. And he saw me way before. I saw him. He saw me coming. I was at my lowest low. I was seriously considering, not being here anymore at that time. It was that bad. And he saw me, and at the right moment in the right place, he leaned in and he had a really honest, real, loving conversation with me, and it split me so wide open, and it absolutely changed the course of my life.
Wow.
So only because he saw something, and he that's his superpower too. Like he sees when people have that thing, whatever that thing is to him, and he's just like, I just have to water it. I just have to do what I do.
Yeah.
And that guy saved my life. Saved my
Wow.
life. Yeah.
Wow. So what is because once again, I'm sure you could come up with lots of examples for this question, but what
Mhm.
is an example of a situation where you personally
Mhm.
got to make a really substantial impact, and maybe even in the moment, maybe it surprised you a little bit. You were just like, wow, look at what happened right there. And yet you also know that would have never been possible if not for the relationship that you and he had. What's an example of a situation where you were empowered in that way?
Empowered. Oh my gosh. Well, it helped wake me up to my own gift
Okay.
that I had been unaware of. And I would say it was shortly after that. Gosh, this is really hard to draw a line from that to this, but I was, I had a manager that was working for me.
Okay.
And I had some problems with him, and I brought him into my office to have a conversation with him, and he started talking, and I had this experience, um, and it's that opened me up to the idea. Coaching was not even in my vocabulary, but I knew after that meeting, like, oh, I'm gonna help people for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
As I was sitting there with him, I was just seeing things that I had no understanding of, but I understood what I was seeing. I was seeing him as a little boy. I was seeing him in his home. I was seeing what was sort of driving him to behave in the ways that he was behaving. And then I said it to him, and he just about fell out of his chair because I had no business saying those things to him because he didn't know how I knew them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we parted ways, and I went outside, and I just couldn't believe what had happened. I didn't even know what had happened. But that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. The job that I was in, just became absolutely unbearable after that because I had a taste of what I could do for others, and that's all I could think about.
Wow. Wow. So So then that led you on this path that you've been on now of helping people in this way and stuff. Um, how did it actually transpire? How did you go from that to like then starting your actual business and moving in this direction? How did it transpire?
Well, I was sitting alone in a little hut in the middle of the jungle, starving, because you don't read, you don't listen to music, you don't talk to anybody. I think I'd been in there for probably 6 weeks on this
Okay.
particular trip, and I had a very interesting dream one night, and I woke up and information just started dropping in my head, and I was just writing furiously for the next 6 weeks. And so by the time I came home, I just knew I was supposed to get out there and help people. I didn't know what that was supposed to look like. So I just sort of said, okay, well, I'm just going to go home. I'm going to make my website, which was ridiculous. When I think about it, it was so ridiculous. Which is great. It's great, but it was just a absolute novel. And so unfocused. But I managed to actually attract a few people. And eventually, like within a few months, I had a couple clients, and they were founding CEOs.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, So it just started evolving from there. And at the end of one of my longer engagements, I had only been doing this for maybe a year at that point. I saw the engagement, which was really supporting me at that time, because getting a coaching practice going, it's a little lean when you're beginning it. And I approached the guy that I'd been working for, and I just asked him if there was anybody that he knew that he thought I might be interested in meeting. And he said, "Yeah, this guy who used to be my Vistage chair. I think you'd really like him." And so I met him for coffee. We had a nice chat, but it didn't evolve into anything. And a few weeks later, I went down to Peru, and I spent another 3 months down there in silence. And while I was there, I wrote a white paper on leadership. And when I came home, I sent it to a few people, and something in me went, just, yeah, send it to that guy. So I sent it to him, and he invited me to coffee maybe a week later, and we didn't know each other. And he said, I have been running this Vistage group for 20 years for small business owners, and I'm going to be retiring, and I want you to take it over. And, you know, I mean, wow, like an angel just dropped out of the sky and said, here's a gift, you know? And so, um, that's really when things started, the heat started getting turned up, because now I had, these business owners that I was meeting with on the regular and really getting into their lives and their businesses. And so this methodology, I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, everywhere I looked, I was just connecting dots, and I couldn't believe what I saw. But the challenge is not what I see. The challenge is helping them see what I'm
Yeah.
seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's really where it got its legs, and then just
Wow.
started growing from there. And it's just
Yeah.
been this, evolving process.
What a phenomenal story. And um, I I've had so many experiences like that over the years where just being in the right place at the right time, having they just led to the right conversation with the right people, that I could have never imagined, that I could have never I could have never in my under my own like power been able to like cause that to happen, and yet it did.
Yeah.
And like you meeting this gentleman and letting him know that, hey, I've been the Vista's chair here for 20 years, and I'm getting ready to step down, and I feel really led to just hand this off to you. And, I mean, stuff like that happening, um, to the point now where, it happens so frequently that I just fully expect it, because I just, I now kind of view myself, as I'm sure you do, as this, we're just this vessel. We're just here on this earth using our God-given abilities and to just make our biggest impact in whatever form that looks like, in whatever form that takes. And and we like I get connected with people all the time because of this podcast. That this, and I never envisioned that when I started this podcast. When I
Mhm.
was talking, and like, what, when I started this podcast 4 years ago, nothing could have been further from my radar. I was like, I was not even thinking about hosting a podcast, but yet my buddy Brad, I was down in San Diego visiting him. We went out to lunch. And he tells me, he's like, Kevin, you need to start hosting a podcast. And I'm like, podcast? I'm like, why would you say that? And he's like, well, Kev, for one, you love talking with entrepreneurs. And so you'll do it
Mm.
just because you love doing it. And he's like, and the thing
Mm.
is he's like, you ain't gonna mess it all up trying to figure out how to monetize it like so many people do. But yet
Mm.
he's like, you totally will, and it's gonna happen organically for you, just like it has for me. And
Mm.
I'm like, okay. I was like, I hear you, Brad, but I'm like, my gosh, the last thing the business world needs is another Me Too podcast. I was like, what would I do to separate this thing apart? And he's like, Kev, he's like, you're going to talk with entrepreneurs about their most valuable relationships.
Mm.
And as soon as he says that, I'm like, oh wow, that sounds. I mean, I've been the relationship guy for years. And I'm like, that is right up my alley. And I'm now all of a sudden I'm thinking like, wow, that sounds really cool. That sounds really rewarding, and like and I'll tell you, I came home. I started reaching out to just a couple of my entrepreneur friends and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting this podcast, called Million Dollar Relationships. Would you be open to just hopping on Zoom with me and we're gonna have a conversation around the most valuable relationships in your life and in your business?" And right from the get-go, it was this amazing experience. And I'm like, oh man. And not just for me, but for them too. And I'm like, I just want more of this. I want to have more of these conversations. And here we are now, 400 episodes into it. you know? And
Yeah.
uh, and it just keeps bringing amazing people into my life. And
Mhm.
uh, I mean, it's we and people, other people might hear those kinds of stories. They might hear your story, they might hear my story and say, well, that couldn't happen for me. Oh, heck yes, it could. Why can't it happen for you? Because we all, every single one of us, has this thing called unique ability, our God-given abilities, however you want to look at it. And when we just like realize that and we figure out like, oh, this, I do have this gift, I have this ability. And most of us like just kind of like brush it off because, oh, that's so easy, anybody could do that. Well, no, that's easy for you to do that. You have that gift, you have that ability. That's not easy for everybody, but we brush it off thinking, oh, anybody can do that, and so therefore there's no value in that. And I mean, I love connecting entrepreneurs. But yet for many
Mhm.
years, I I would put entrepreneurs on a pedestal if I deemed that they were way more successful than me, or that they ran a business that was much bigger than mine, or whatever it was. I would put them on this pedestal. So then, because I did that, I felt anxious or uncomfortable or whatever being around them or trying to have a conversation, because here's me and here's them, and there's this big gap. But
Mhm.
now, after doing what I've done for so long and talking with so many entrepreneurs over the years, I've discovered that, well, for one, we're way more alike than we are different. Every one of us is
Mhm.
doing the very best we can with what we got, I
Mhm.
was talking a couple of weeks ago with this guy who was a retired Air Force general. And I was telling him how I used to
Mhm.
feel really uncomfortable in certain situations. He's like, well, Kev, he said, but yeah, but you and I, we're just like each other. We're the same guys, just have different backgrounds. And I was like, yeah, I was like, you know what? I recognize that today, but I didn't recognize it back then, you know. And
Mhm.
you were one of those guys that I would put on this pedestal, and so I would feel just
Mhm.
awkward because of my own doing, And
Sure,
and
sure.
now I realize, that heck, I mean, talking with millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires on a regular basis, and it's like like I said, we're way more alike than we are different, and we're all doing the best we can with what we got,
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
and,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely. Yep. Amen.
well, David, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. For anybody that might be listening to this and thinking to themselves, man, Kev, I really like David. I like who he is. I like how he shows up. And man, it's some of the stuff that he shared, and it's really resonating with me. And man, he might be able to help me out, or maybe I know somebody else that like, yeah, I might want to connect them with David. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks along with the episode here?
Absolutely. Excuse me. If you go to leadering, leadering.com /million dollar relate, so MDR, million
Okay.
dollar relationships. Uh, there's a couple of things there. One of them is a download that you can do to a process. I didn't introduce it in the podcast, but you're welcome to look at that. If that's interesting to you, you can use that. But there's another link, and for I tell people who are interested in finding out if they'd be interested in working with me to bring me their biggest thing, like bring me the thing that you can't figure out. I offer a complimentary 90-minute inner architecture audit. There's no sales pitch. It's just 90 minutes of real work. You walk away with a map of what we found and what you can do about it, understanding what the wound is that is driving the problem, the rules that grew up around it, driving your thinking and sneaking into your business in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's all documented and laid it out very, very nice and neat. So I would encourage anybody who feels kind of at the end of their rope that way, they want to figure this out. They suspect that they are the problem. Go there and get on my calendar and be happy to take you through a 90-minute process.
Awesome. Wow. What a generous offer. That is really awesome. Um, is there any last thing that you feel led to share, David, before we call it a wrap?
I did feel it to share. Yeah, it's just something that's been coming up lately in some of the conversations with newer clients that have been coming on. And I think I may have alluded to it earlier. And it's just that this work, any kind of inner work, there is a lot of misunderstanding around it, and there's a lot of fear around it. And it's just now, granted, there are people that are dealing with pretty serious things, and it can be very difficult for them. But for the vast majority of us, it is getting into these things and understanding these things. It's just relieving and freeing. So if you have something in your life right now that you can't figure out or keeps showing up and you don't know why, you keep hitting the same wall, you can't do the thing that you know you should do, or you can't stop doing the thing that you know you need to stop doing, no matter what it's costing you or the people that are depending on you. It is not that far away from understanding it and changing the behavior and the choice that drives those issues that are cycling through your life. It's it's not a big, deep, dark, years long journey. It's I work in 6 month arcs. By
Okay.
the time I reach 6 months, people go away with a map and they know how to use it, and they're living a very, very different life. So that's the only thing I guess I feel led to share.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'll tell you, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it, David. I really appreciate you. And I am excited to get this out there and share it with folks. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate the time.
You bet.